I'm Rick from Cartouche Classic Cars. On this video, we're installing Detroit Speed subframe connectors for 68 to 72 Chevy Nova. So what we got here, we got directions. I haven't even read them yet. I've done these on first gen F bodies on the channel, but we haven't officially videoed one on a Nova. So great thing about Detroit Speed, they come with the templates to really make this install a little bit easier. I have them set on this table right now to just show you what we got. What I like about these Detroit Speed subframe connectors is really, they tuck up really tight into the car. They do take a little bit more time and effort to install because you do have to cut and modify the floor pans a little bit. I'll show you through this video the process and how it goes. It's really not that bad, especially with the template. The idea behind this is cut a little bit at a time. You don't want to cut too much, get tight fitting gaps, and then make the weld up easier. So what we're looking at, here's your two actual subframe connectors. This part will go around the rear where the frame rails are, and then the front area is capped off with one of these caps. And then what you have is this will go into the front subframe clip. So what you have, they'll look something like that. So there's going to be 4 of those. Also be aware that these are numbered and you have to read the directions on. There's an inside and an outside. They're a little bit different. I don't know. I've never tried to mix them up, but I'm assuming just follow the directions on how they go. So that's the kit on the Detroit Speed subframe. Let's take a look at the Nova right now. If you look, this is 1970 Chevy Nova. We built the whole entire body on. If you haven't seen it, go back to our videos and you know, it's pretty much was almost stripped down to nothing. It's all aftermarket components, parts, everything like that. Gaps are still not perfect. In the last video, we just got done welding the roof and the whole rear clip on this car. Now it's going to be time, I feel, to do the subframe connectors. I always like to do subframe connectors after the sheet metal's completely done. We just want to make sure that the car is going to fit together right and we don't have to do any final adjustments. Subframe connectors really stiffen up the car. If you put them in before the rear quarters and everything else are on the car, things can get really, you know, the car's not moving anymore. So now you could have some issues with your quarter fitment, gaps not being able to be adjusted. Also, I have fixed other cars in the past and I've seen them come into the shop. Main thing is make sure your front subframe and your front clip is squared up. If that's not straight, something's not right, cross your car. If your car's not level, on jack stands is what I think the directions say. Obviously, we're leveled out here on a frame jig and all this build platform, the car was completely squared up, leveled, and verified factory measurements. So all this stuff is important because once you put in the subframe connectors, you're 100% committed. It's a lot harder to cut them out. You almost got to eat a floor pan. Something else I did, and you'll see on the video that's a little bit different, is we don't have seat risers in this car. I know I've done these installs on other cars and everything else, and I know putting the seat risers in beforehand is just extra stuff we're gonna cut around. So just be aware, if you are doing a floor pan, maybe try to think about the whole process and the whole build on what you're doing, and don't install your seat risers. You can install them later down the road. So that's basically the intro on what we're going to do on the Detroit Speed subframe connectors. Let's get to some work. I'm going to try to make it a short video and get right to the point. So stay tuned.
So this video, I'm showing you how I go about installing these subframe connectors. I'm not sponsored by Detroit Speed, and this video might not be exactly how they would do it. So what we're going to do first, we're going to cut out the left and right floor template, which is the exact same template. You're just going to flip it over and use it on each side. So as far as the template, they have a mark for 5 inches, where on the back of the template, it's going to be 5 inches from the inside to the actual pinch weld of the rocker. On the front of the template, it's going to be 5 1/8 inches to the pinch weld on the rocker panel. You could see with the seat hole drain, it about lines up, but do not go directly by these marks. They might be slightly off. And then on the front, you could see we're measuring to the subframe. So that's 15 1/8 inches to the rear edge of the subframe. What I like to do on that, I like to add some, good half an inch on it or so, just because a lot of times with these subframes, if you get them a little bit lower, depending on how you have everything in the car, it's easier to just keep taking back the metal versus cutting too much, and now you have to add metal to that. And that's on this whole template itself. You can see I'm tracing it on the outside. I'm using magnets to help me. You see now we just flipped the template around and we're just measuring it the other way. But like I said, it's easier to take your measurements and cut on the inside, then just come back and grind it clean, knowing that everything's going to fit a lot better. And that's what we're shooting for here, really tight tolerances. Also, something else to note, we don't have that problem with this Nova, but if you have fuel lines, brake lines, anything else, e-brake cables, things are going to get in the way, you're going to have to take them out before you start cutting. One, to make sure you obviously don't cut anything or do any more damage, and it's going to just be easier to get around them in the long run. So now that we have everything traced down, we're going to start the cutout process. Obviously, I told you I'm going to go on the inside of my marks a little bit, and we're going to just kind of grind them out a little bit after we start test fitting everything. I'm just using a simple battery powered cutoff wheel. You could see once I got my subframe fit in there and make sure everything's looking good, I'm going to add an extra step in this. So I like to sit there and cut off this back floor pan area. The subframe connector does fit really well against it. However, it is thinner sheet metal. So what I like to do, I like to add some more 3/8 inch just steel to go directly into the actual torque box on the top. This is not needed though. So if you're doing these subframe connectors, you can just sit there and weld them right into the floor pan and just kind of clearance the subframe connector itself. You might have to redo the curvature of it. This to me is just an extra step. We're going to get some weld through primer in there and make sure rust stops sealing. You're going to see that later down the road, but just something extra that I add on to it. So now we're going to turn our attention to the driver's side and we're going to use the cutoff wheel. It's the same process. Now be aware that there is a left and right subframe connector. So just make sure if you put the subframe connector in one side and it does not fit very well, be aware that you might have the wrong side. Once we got the back areas cut, you can see right now I'm going to take an 80 grit on a surface prep disc, pneumatic surface prep disc, and we're going to just clean out, just clearance the whole area, get everything fitting as best we can. And now I'm going to take all the epoxy primer I added to this floor pan when we started sealing up this car, and we're going to just take all of that back off so we get really good clean welds. The idea of the best welds is a best prepped area and good fitting pieces. You're going to see we're going to do a bunch of mixture of TIG welding and MIG welding on this process. So everything on the subframe connectors installing on the car, you will see will be MIG welded. Everything outside on the subframe connectors itself, we are going to TIG weld. So like I said, we do some weld through primer on it. Then what we're going to do, I did sandblast these subframe connectors. I put them in the blast cabinet. I didn't have a good video angle to show that, but now that they're completely sandblasted, we're going to go ahead and we're going to fit them up back to the car. Now we're worried the back fits solid, and then what we're doing, we're making sure the top of the subframe matches the top of the subframe connector. Then right there I measured back 1/2 of an inch and marked the subframe connector. They do send these subframe connectors a little bit long and they want a little bit of clearance in there, tolerance in there. So that's what we're doing. They want 1/2 inch. That's what we cut. Now we cut our 1/2 inch. We're going to go ahead and cap the end of these subframe connectors. This is what I was saying, that we're going to use the TIG welder. You could see I just done 2 tacks on it, and now these parts were also sandblasted. So you can see right now I also put weld through primer on the inside of the subframe connector, and I did hit weld through primer on the front of this cap area. Just being, I have to go back over it. I was thinking that we were going to just weld it on the car, but more than likely I should have just left this front area bare metal, TIG welded it, and then came back through and then added the weld through primer for the final install on the car. Like I said, with the TIG welding, I just feel doing these parts, it's going to come out a lot cleaner. I can control the puddle. I know I'm getting really good penetration on everything, so that's why I chose the TIG welding on this route. Once we got the caps cooled down and they're fit on the car and completely welded up, we're gonna go ahead and mock this back up in the car because we need these two side brackets. Don't forget there's an inside side bracket and an outside bracket, so make sure you get the part numbers correct. What I'm gonna do, I have the subframe connectors you can see tacked up on the floor pan, just something I can break off. I made sure I'm on my 1/2 inch measurement, everything's tight and where I want it, and now I'm gonna just take the MIG welder and we're gonna tack these side brackets in. Once we get the side brackets tacked in, we're going to pull the subframe connectors back out. Now that the subframe connectors are back out, I can go ahead now and just run the TIG welder and go all the way on the side connectors. Actually, looking at the video now, I remember I did add the weld through primer knowing that we were going to add these side connectors, so that's why everything was pre-positioned with the weld through primer. So again, this area can also be MIG welded. It does not have to be TIG welded. I just feel when you see at the end, again, it's going to be a cleaner weld. I'm also going to spot in the 3 holes that were dimple dyed there that we can fill those in with, rosette holes. We're going to fill those in with the TIG welder, and I'm able to get the torch in there, hold the heat on there, and then really kind of work the puddle in. Just again, make sure we're getting full penetration. I do completely weld these brackets all the way around, and I gotta say, welding them out of the car is 100% a lot easier. I've actually done this in other videos and past where we weld them in the car. We're just trying to save some time and effort, and that is not test fit them, pull them back out, weld them solid, then bring them back in that car. That little extra step you're going to see when the job's finally finished will just come out so much better. Now we're on our final fitment. You could see right now I'm going to take the subframe connector. I'm using a Porter Power, a hydraulic jack. You use blocks of wood, anything to lift it up and get it exactly where you want it. I am putting a bunch of pressure on this connector, making sure everything's level underneath and just kind of bending it and modifying it exactly where I want. If you're not happy with it, take it back out, grind a little bit on the connector, find out where you need to make more clearance, and then come back in. I do like to tack all 4 corners and then up and down the floor pan before we really go for final welding, just to make sure there's no issues and it's easier to cut out some tacks versus you burning in a subframe connector and then come to find out one piece on the back doesn't fit. You could see how it slides in. I've done it so many times now. It kind of just slides in through the back. Everything fits really well. You are going to have on your front subframe, you're going to have to clean up certain parts of it. You could see this is the Detroit Speed Hydroform front subframe kit. I did have to grind a little bit of the powder coat off. It's a very high quality subframe. We are very careful on just grinding a 1/2 inch of that, powder coat off, just so I can come back through and weld it. You can see right now I did have, like I said, everything completely tacked up, and now I'm just going to run my MIG weld right down. You could TIG weld this. It takes a lot more effort and hassle, and honestly, first, anyone seeing it under the carpet and everything else, not really going to worry about it. So this is just something where we're going to save the owner some time and effort and run it through with the MIG weld completely solid. I know in the directions Detroit Speed said they want you to grind your welds clean. A lot of times I will leave the welds. I think the welds look clean enough right here that we can go ahead and add some seam sealer down the road when it's time for paint, and this will really look pretty good. I am going to add this last bracket right here. You could see I just weld that in, and that connects it to the torque box. We fold that plate down, and this job is finished.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video on the Detroit Speed subframe connectors. You could see we did take the initiative and got the car off the frame jig. I also cleaned up all the mounts that were attached to this car. So I'll show that on the next video. That will be more the intro. So we're in between 2 videos right now, but wrapping up these frame connectors, they look really good. We did get everything in epoxy primer. I cleaned up most of the welds. In the grand scheme of things, the owner's going to go around and he's going to, we were talking about, put a little bit of self-leveling seam sealer when the time comes for paint and everything else, just to kind of hide all the welds and clean it up. And just in case there's a pinhole every now and then that we did solid weld them, that will stop moisture from coming from the backside. They're just going to help seal everything up and make it even better. So I did run the driver's side outside frame connector. If you see on the walk around, what it was, I'm just trying to spray as much epoxy as can on the top just to make sure we can get full coverage and it drip down the backside. Again, I'd rather just get the epoxy in there and have a run. I mean, this isn't the final painting. Again, I've said this many times that we're more concerned with coverage versus actually laying down a show winning quality coat of epoxy primer knowing he's going to put chassis paint on it. But saying that, like I said, it's a big step. Now the car has been relieved from the frame jig. It's holding itself up with the subframe connectors. This is a real solid piece now. It's not going anywhere. I do really like these subframe connectors as far as clearance, as ride height and everything else. They are a little bit more work to install than other ones, as you could see from the video. But if you have some fabrication skill, it's not the end of the world. So I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars. Please check out our Facebook page. This will be posted before the video comes out, Carthage Classic Cars. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps us out doing these videos and other ones and passes on the word on what we're doing so we get more projects in the shop. Stay tuned for the next video. What the next video is, now that we are off the frame jig, we're gonna assemble the Detroit Speed Quattrolink Part 2 of all the rear end components, and then hopefully get this car for first time on its wheels and tires and really kind of see what it's going to look like at a ride height, a general ride height. I mean, the owner's going to go through and have more adjustability in it, but we'll get it on the ground for a first time on wheels and tires on the next video. So stay tuned for that. Again, I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars, and we'll see you next time.